Today's episode is brought to you by the Local Palette Cookbook Club.
Cookbook authoring is a long game that requires persistence. But how do you know when to keep going and when it's time to move on? Welcome to Everything Cookbooks, a podcast for writers, readers, and cooks. This is Kristin Donnelly, and I'm here with the whole gang, Kate Leahy, Molly Stevens, and Andrea and Kate. Hey, everyone.
Hey, Kristin. Happy holidays.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
So today we're going to talk a bit about persistence, something many cookbook authors need. But before that, I thought it would be fun if we just did a little bit of a year in review in cookbooks. And first, I thought we would talk about the Anthropic settlement because many authors, their copywritten books were used to train AI. And the first settlement to come through is with Anthropic. There is an offer for most authors to get about $3,000. And I just wanted to talk to you all about how you were approaching this.
I'm a member of the Authors Guild that brought the suit as a class action suit.
The authors that brought the suit are Andrea Bartz and a couple of other authors. And so their name is on the suit with Anthropic. I'm glad that these authors did take time that was unpaid to go out there and to put their names out there for this lawsuit. It's an imperfect lawsuit, of course. There's no such thing as a perfect lawsuit when, works have been pirated. But it is something that's being done.
Yeah, because theoretically, someone can purchase your book in hardcover, scan it, and then use it. But in this case, Anthropic is using it for potential profitable gain.
Right.
My understanding is that theoretically, each work could be repaid like $150,000 or something like that. But there's over how many hundreds of thousands of titles that are included?
170,000.
And that's up to 150,000.
Yeah.
But the sort of starting offer, I guess, is 3,000, right?
Divided between the different parties involved, the publisher and the authors. Yeah.
Right. And typically there's a 50-50 split. So let's say you're a single, the book is wholly yours, you didn't co-author it with anyone, then you'd be splitting the, $3,000. But then there are also legal fees. There's all this stuff. Okay. I mean, it's kind of I made a claim because 6 of my books were included. They took information from 6 of my books, and I've written 7 cookbooks. And I'm like, wow, that's quite a lot. And it's not so much the money, because once you add it up, it's unfortunately not a huge amount of money, but it's really making a statement to AI to say that you really cannot do this to authors and to publishers. We will not stand for it.
Yeah. I've seen some authors who are so furious that they are attempting they're going to turn down that settlement amount and go back, basically, and sue again. But yeah, as you mentioned, the Authors Guild, their recommendation is to take the settlement. Is that right, Andrea?
No, they don't recommend it. They're just here is a portal for you to go through and see whether or not your work is included.
I see.
And then they give you, it's very thorough in the Anthropic settlement website, and we'll provide a link in the show notes. And then they outline all of the actions that you can take and then what you can do.
And it's very timely, really, because there are 4 options. You can file a claim, you can file an opt-out, you can file an objection, or you can do nothing. And these are, if you go through the list and see that your books are included, these are your 4 options.
The opting out is the January thing, and then to file a claim, it's March. So there's 2 dates. And you may also want to check in with your agent about this because they ought to get a sense of what's going on. My sense is that this is not the last that we're going to hear from AI, obviously.
For sure not.
So it's interesting to take a note to see what's included, what's not, and kind of climb out of our niche because as you say, Kristin, it's a long game. And we've noted in this podcast that writing is a very lonely thing. And I feel authors do need to band together to make a statement. And it's your choice as to what kind of statement you want to make to AI.
Yeah, it's interesting. The Atlantic article, which we have linked to before, that sort of talks about how this all happened. And at first, I think Zuckerberg talked about this. He considered getting permission to scan all this and then realized it would just take way too long. And it was a time. It had to happen quickly because someone else was going to do it. And so everything's moving so quickly. So they just, what is it, act first and apologize later?
Right. It's that whole move fast and break thing, Silicon Valley bullshit. I live in the heart of AI land. Like, OpenAI is down the street from where I live. And it's just like, and the hubris involved with these companies is pretty astounding. I will say what's interesting about the books that were used to train AI, the titles that I've worked on, all the titles that had ebooks that were published between a certain amount of time up until like 2019 seemed to be the cutoff. Books I had that were published 2020 and onwards are not on the list. But A16, Food and Wine, interestingly enough, we could never agree to have an ebook version of that among the 3 authors. And that one was not on the list because it is not a digital file. So I wonder if there's also, it was just easier for them to just scrape ebooks. So I'm thinking if you're looking at cookbooks that came out in 1970, 1980 with no ebook version, that's still like raw there. That's stuff that you can mine that isn't going to be like just being fed to these, chatbots. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong.
I have no idea because the digital version of my first book, Into the Vietnamese Kitchen, was included. But then the other titles, the subsequent titles, there weren't digital versions.
Oh, okay. Interesting. My theory is wrong.
You're unfortunately, even though AI is much closer to you than I am, you're...
Yeah, but my sense is they can scrub it whether it's digital or not.
Yeah.
Google books, all
exactly.
that Google project of scanning books. Yeah.
It's interesting, Andrea, listening to you, because on a personal level, my 3 cookbooks, solo books, have all been taken. And at first I was sort of like, que sera. This is what happens. This is the world. I'm not. And again, it's not the money. It's going after it for the money. It's hardly going to compensate for the amount of information, creative output that they've taken. But what you're saying about standing up and saying, no, this is not how intellectual property works. Like, I object. And that's pretty much, to me, what filing a claim would mean for me.
Yeah, exactly. I object.
But you didn't ask. You should have asked.
You should have asked. I mean, when we sign a contract to write a book, there's all of this serial rights, blah, blah, blah. We have all these rights outlined in those damn contracts that go on and on. And then these companies come in and they just take everything. Mm-hmm. They just suck it up like a vacuum cleaner and then spit it out. AI is getting better all the time. So at what point do we say no?
Yeah. Well, especially as you pointed out, Kate, that it's for profit. It's not like it's like putting all this knowledge together necessarily just for it's not like a library or something. It's a for-profit company.
Yeah.
Right. It's not for the greater good.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, they would say it's for the greater good, right?
I mean, the only thing that AI will be incapable of doing is things like being a mechanic for your car, fixing your plumbing, your electrical, and then actually physically cooking.
Well, I was going to say, AI cannot taste and cook. And so I'll just very briefly mention an article that Adam Arache wrote for Bon Appetit called AI Duped My Cookbook and Made a Mess. And it's hilarious. It basically took the spirit of his cookbook about Philly's Polisi Club. So it's Italian-American recipes, but the methods were I love the opening line, actually. It's like, a 350-degree oven will not cook a bell pepper in 30 minutes.
Right. It's a wonderful article because the narrative where he tries to fix it. He follows the AI recipe and tries to fix it. And then his wife is like, what are you doing? Why? Because that's our impulse is to fix it. And then he lets the second one just fail. He's like,
yeah,
it's a good read.
Yeah, he's a great writer. I'm like, yeah, because in the end, AI cannot taste. And, people talk about I'm not just talking about the sense of taste in our mouths, but also people's sense of taste for aesthetics. That's just going to become more and more important because AI is just pulling in like all the crap.
Right. Well, I also have to say that I think we've talked about this before, but I do think we're reaching a plateau in what these large language models can do. No matter the company, they're kind of reaching this plateau because they have sucked up all our words and all the words from so many other people and websites. And now to have a big breakthrough, it's going to be a lot harder to make that next step. So I'm hopeful that in 2026, going back to like, this new year we're looking at, that things will plateau, things we're going to slow down, and we'll have time to catch up, and we'll have time for guardrails to be put in, and we'll have a little bit more understanding on how these systems are going to work within the lives of the world.
Yeah, it's very optimistic.
So my husband teaches college, and he's always having to grade student papers, and sometimes he just says that is probably written by AI. And he actually will run the paper through an AI checker. And then the AI checker tells him whether or not it's written by AI. Mm-hmm. He goes, it's pretty interesting what AI will say about itself. And sometimes then he'll confront the student and the student will say, I have a tutor. And he's like, really? Your tutor writes so well, but your tutor never cites the book, the textbook.
Can we talk about M dashes now?
Yes, segueing into grammar.
Because isn't that supposed to be the tell?
Yeah, I feel that way about the M dash. I've gotten self-conscious about using it because people are like, oh, it's a tell of AI. But then, I don't know, then I've gone back to putting it in or just being a little more careful. How about you?
I'm an M dasher, but I curtail it. I'm also an exclamation point user, and I try to curb my enthusiasm for both of those things, M dashes and exclamation points, because there's so much enthusiasm, right, that you're trying to convey.
Is anyone watching or has watched that show Pluribus?
I started it.
It's this idea of like this hive mind. And when the main character is talking to an individual who's part of this hive mind, it really does seem like she's talking to AI because it's very deferential. Oh, well, that's an interesting idea. Let me see what I can do for you.
Patronizing. Yeah.
Patronizing tone. I find that show so interesting to have it come out now.
I kind of feel that way when I go into the Apple store. Kind of, let me please you.
It's funny with the M dash because I've always used it early on, way before AI. I was, cautioned to just be careful, use it thoughtfully, because it was a crutch. I realized it was a crutch for me because my sentence structure wasn't coming together. And so the M dash kind of
let you insert an aside or something.
Yeah, without the hard break of a parentheses or a semicolon or something like that. So it's made me value it even more. And I'm sort of personally insulted. AI is like, I'm like, oh no, don't take my M dash because I've worked so hard. And then also, I don't know if you read much poetry, but like Emily Dickinson, I mean, she was a master of the M dash.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Amazing. So we're not going to get rid of the M dash because AI is messing with it.
And then what do we do with the N dash after the M dash?
Do you know why it's called an M dash and an N dash?
I don't.
Length. The space it takes up. An M dash, the letter M is bigger in typeface and the letter N is more narrow. So the M is a longer dash.
Fascinating.
But isn't the N dash just like between a range of numbers? And
No.
The N dash, there's more of a like grammatical rule attached to it. Whereas I feel like M dash is a little more subjective in its use.
Yeah. And N dash is supposed to indicate a range. Like for example, 1950 to 1959, you would run an N dash, EN dash. And N dash is also, according to this very, very wonky copy editor I worked with, used for hyphenating certain things.
Yeah.
And I cannot tell you exactly the situation right now because it's so convoluted. It's very wonky.
Connecting like compound adjective or something.
Adjective. Yes, it's a compound adjective, but it is only like in certain cases. Mm-hmm. And so one would leave that to the copy editor. I know I have my love-hate relationship with them, but when I do have questions like that, they answer right away.
Yes.
So I feel like we should talk a bit about our year, 2025, as a podcast, as individuals, cookbook authors, if there's anything that we want to celebrate.
Well, Kristin, can we start with you? You were part of the Turtle Island team.
I totally threw this in here so we could celebrate me.
You birthed something very important.
Right. As a member of this podcast, I feel personally proud just because you're part of our group. And Turtle Island is an incredible accomplishment.
Thank you.
And important book, and it has gotten and will continue to be recognized and held up as a really important book.
Thank you. Yeah, Turtle Island came out in November. Very exciting.
Tell us how many years it took.
It took 5 years from when I first spoke to Sean until it came out, and actually a little bit longer even than 5 years. But it was a full year writing the proposal.
Yeah.
Full year.
Yeah.
And then I think we originally had 18 months to write it, but then we added on another year pretty quickly.
How many pages?
400 and whatever the next signature would be. So like 411, 412, which to me boggles my mind that we actually fit it all. And if you're familiar at all with Turtle Island, you will see that some of it is very text dense. There are images within, but it's a book to read. And I feel like it's a book to cook from when you're committing to it.
And I think that's okay. I don't think every book needs to be that every night of the week. Some do that brilliantly, but others, a book like that, if it was a 60-minute meal book, it would feel sort of disingenuous from the subject matter.
Yeah.
When you first went into this project, I never imagined that it would be like a lookbook. I always imagined it to be a work of reference. We're in it for the text-heavy content because I feel like nowadays it's easy to produce these kind of beautiful, inspirational works, and people want them. But we also want books that we can add to our shelves and go return to for information. I feel like that's what we're missing.
And you had to trim too, right?
We trimmed a bunch. We trimmed a lot of sidebars. I'm kind of sad these were cut, but we had like a page or two just of an ingredient list for each chapter. So it would be like, the plants, the proteins, and it was like the wild plants as well as the cultivated plants. And there was so much work to put together and then so much work to edit. I was saying to Sean, maybe he turns them into a reference for his nonprofit or something as like a little giveaway or like something quick to sell. But yeah, once we got everything into layout, it was clear we had to cut quite a bit. So they were like, these are the easiest. We were like, okay, fine.
Yeah, but it's amazing though what book designers can do nowadays to cram text in.
Yeah.
We have 95,000 words in Cooking Thai, and it's all going to fit in a 304-page book and look beautiful.
Wow. I saw you were looking at pages the other day.
Yeah, we're finally in first proofs, and we're so excited, and it's just a beautiful, beautiful book, and the house is super excited. Pim is super excited, and we're very proud of getting here and being in this sweet spot where it's really tight, I feel, in the first set of proofs. So we've been through a lot because it's not easy. My dear friends, Kate and Kristin, this work that you do as collaborators, it is a roller coaster.
It is. I did this interview, Sean Sherman and Kate Nelson. Sean's the lead author. Kate wrote all the essays, and they've been doing most of the press as they should. But I did do an interview with Jenna Helwig, who has the newsletter Cookbookery, and she asked about the hardest part about collaborating. And it was really good to think about that because there are a lot of things. But the one thing I was realizing is like figuring out when to lead and when to follow, because your instinct is to always follow, I think, maybe like follow the lead of the author. But sometimes they just want you to take it. And figuring that out can take a while in the partnership.
I remember reading that article, and when you got to that point, that was like something that popped out at me. For me, it was somewhat the opposite because I'm used to being in charge of my own work, right? So I was like, all right, this is what we're going to do. But let me ask you what you think. This is my suggestion.
Well, Kristin and Andrea, can you both say what your roles were on those books?
Yeah, I mean, mine was really, I called it the glue, but I did do a lot of initial recipe development, but it would be like talking with Sean about stuff he wants to do and then putting it into a proper recipe form, but also just all the project management for the photo shoot, for the pulling together the manuscript, helping Kate if she had deadlines, like set those deadlines. Yeah, just like all the recipe minutia, and then managing the testers. There were testers who worked in Minneapolis so Sean could taste all the food.
Did you do the head notes too?
I did.
That's a lot.
I did a lot of the culinary sidebars and I did the pantry section. Everything was so organic in a way that I have to think about what I did versus not, because we were a good team.
You had to be really flexible too, Kristin, because I remember you saying there was a point where you just said, okay, I'm just going to develop that recipe.
Yeah, if I was like waiting too long to get a recipe, I would like write it up and be like, what do you think? You know?
Right. Yeah. For me, Pim and I are really collaborating on this book. We conceptualized it together. I wrote the proposal and also placed it with 10 Speed. I wrote most of the content and where needed I'd prompt her to draft copy. And the recipes were not written down. We had to, and we ended up, because of her life situation, of me oftentimes going to her home and doing kind of like the old James Beard and Craig Claiborne thing of one person cooking, the other person observing and typing really fast and then tasting and bickering and having a good time. But then when it came to, say, the photo shoot and the design, she's very visually oriented. And so I said, you be in charge of that. You take the lead on it. And I told her the kinds of things that needed to get done. But she really dug. And then, she's a reader. And so she really loves books. And this is, her first cookbook. And so she is in it reading the proofs with me. And, I have to prompt her on certain things. But she listens and she trusts me, which is really great. But it's a different role. So I'm editing, I'm interfacing with the editors and here and there. But we've developed that relationship and our roles in it over time. I think that's probably like that with every single collaborative projects that you do, right?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, it's just like finding that flow if it ever happens,
Right.
Yeah, and then telling the other person, I'm always like, I don't want to put words in your mouth because this is just coming out of my fingertips, but you need to own this. This is yours.
Yeah, I think every single collaboration I've done has been so vastly different. And I think the only thing that is true is that sometimes, yes, you have to follow more than you lead, and sometimes you have to lead more than you follow. And it changes depending, and it also can change depending on what part of the process you're in. If you're in copy edits, you're leading. You're not waiting for a chef to get back to you and leading the charge on copy edits. But I think, Kristin, what you said to Jenna in that Q&A was so wise, because I hadn't really thought of it either. But now thinking about it in those terms makes a lot of sense, that finding that balance is really the key probably for any good collaboration.
Yeah.
Talking about persistence, getting those projects moved through.
We're always questioning, should we stay in this career of ours or not, right? And then now with like the whole thing with AI, it's kind of like, what the fuck, is it, what's the future of writing?
I know. And with the new year, I just thought like, it's a great topic to like motivate people about sticking with it. But then I was also starting to think about the beauty of moving on, whether it's, moving on or letting go. And it doesn't necessarily have to be moving on or letting go of something big. It could be like even one particular project. So I wanted to talk about that, but also bring up, you all will have things to say about this, but if you follow astrology at all, which I had not very much until this year, in numerology, we are apparently switching from a year 9 to a year 1. My understanding is a year 9 can often mean like a culmination or completion, and a year 1 can be a new beginning. But then we also have Lunar New Year in mid-February, and we're moving from Year of the Snake to Year of the Fire Horse. For a lot of people, the Year of the Snake is about shedding, and that's shedding old habits or projects. And then Year of the Fire Horse, some say it brings a vibrant new energy to things, but it can be like a really fiery energy that can burn you out. So when I was thinking about persistence, but then I read those astrology things, I was like, maybe we should bring that in as well, because it sounds like astrologically anyway, 2026 could potentially be a big year for shedding the old to start something new. Thoughts?
I'm not sure about this, but I'm a horse and I'm going into the horse year. And I don't think that's necessarily a good thing because that means this year might be more challenging for me. So I like the idea of the fire horse having all this energy, but I'm not a fire horse. I'm a different kind of horse. So does that mean I have to, wear like a red bracelet the whole year to protect myself? Like, I'm not sure. I don't know. Maybe I need to lie low in 2026. Yeah.
Okay, so horse is my father's year. He was born in 1930 and he would have been 96 this year. Horses are beautiful. They're strong. They have leadership qualities. So I follow both lunar and solar calendar astrology. And when my now husband and I first started dating, he did the numerology on like our birth years and birth dates and all that.
Wow.
So he's like, we're compatible. But I'm like, no, wait, we're different signs in the solar calendar.
Oh no, Ram and Rooster.
I'm a monkey, rooster, you're Ram, and I'm like, I don't know how this is going to work out. And he's like, don't worry. And then I'm like Aquarian and he's Aries. I'm like, water and fire. I don't know. But we've been together. We stay together. And so I think that all of this astrology, there's always going to be a positive and a negative, which I think is actually kind of a good thing because they're parameters for you to understand human behavior and sort of make sense of what happens to you as the year goes by. I always take a look at that stuff and kind of put it all together and think to myself, for example, in 2025, I apparently was supposed to have health challenges and I had like this bizarre acid reflux that I had to like deal with. But then in the year of the snake, I shed weight that I've been trying to get rid of for a long time and I've kept it off. So I'm like, that's actually really positive. But yeah, I was like, I got to change my ways. And I feel like we can look to astrology to help us think there are forces guiding us to where we need to be. And we don't know what those forces are yet or will ever. Somebody's watching out for you. Something's watching out for you.
Gotta believe that, right? No matter what your astrological chart shows, cookbook writing is not an overnight pursuit. So whether, you do feel like you're shedding and starting something new, and starting something new could be like all of a sudden you just decide you want to write a cookbook, or could be like you've been doing this for years and you're ready to move on, or you're ready to switch, writing about wellness to writing about chocolate cake.
I really love that you brought all of this up, Kristin, because like the astrology thing, it's a way for you to just step back, right? I mean, we're always so like focused in on what we're doing and with blinders on. And the thing about astrology is that it makes you think that there's something, a different perspective on life, right? So, I think about that acid reflux and it's like, it's changed my life. I mean, and I think about like me doing this collaboration project. I mean, it's like, it's been challenging, but at the end, there's something beautiful. And I think that that is all part of persistence of this thing of like, you just got to like see it through to the other side and see what life has to offer you. And maybe you do a little pivot. Maybe you did a bunch of collaborations and now you're feeling like, I want to write my own thing, or maybe I'm going to try a different subject, or maybe this isn't quite the industry I want to be in. And having that agency to know that you're making change in your life is positive. And I think that level of staying nimble is important in this particular field because things are changing constantly.
Yeah. What keeps you all interested in this field?
Such a good question.
For me, before we started this podcast, before the pandemic, I published my last cookbook. I have not worked on a cookbook since 2019, 2020. I've done some other project work and magazine work, consulting work, maybe a little editing here and there. And I was really ready to step back. Not because I didn't like the industry, but I sort of felt like I did what I wanted to do. I wrote the books I wanted to write. I've been thinking about this. I think a big thing for me, with a lot of people with the pandemic, a lot of what drove my cookbook writing was that I could get out on the road and teach. And when that was taken away, because it really hasn't come back to the level that it was at, the books weren't as meaningful to me because they were a companion of my teaching piece. And they allowed me to get out and be with people in classrooms. And just last week, somebody wrote me an email and said, you should do some online classes. And Andrea, I know you've done them and had success with them, but I'm not really compelled to do that. So I I mean, I've said this before. When we started this podcast, I was like, I kind of think I'm done, But this podcast has reinvigorated my interest in cookbooks because of the people we talk to and the stories we hear and the fact that no one publishing journey is the same, and that the persistence of the authors, editors, the people we talk to that are consistently trying to contribute to this field. The genre is just so rich, and the people who choose to contribute to it, yeah, sure, a few people get rich here. Very few. And those tend to not be the people that, we're trying to talk to, but people who have this thing to contribute, because cooking and feeding ourselves and feeding others, or whether it's from entertaining or discovering your own story or cultural roots, there's so many reasons to write a cookbook, and there's so much richness to uncover in doing it. For me, that's what keeps me going, is that I just found it absolutely fascinating. It's my way to connect to the world. Andrea, I love what you're saying about astrology. Helps you sort of step back and see your place in the world. For me, thinking about food and how people interact with cooking helps me see my place in the world. Mm-hmm. That's what keeps me going, even though I'm not going as hard as I used to.
Yeah, I love it. And it's also very normal, I feel like, in a creative pursuit to have seasons where you're like super in production. Mm-hmm. And then maybe you could transition to mentoring, which I feel like that's a lot of what we do on this podcast, is like sharing our experiences and helping bring other experiences forward to help mentor the future. Or like some people go back and forth between those things, like production and then mentoring, production, mentoring. Mm-hmm. I'm very curious after Turtle Island. I'm not saying like, oh, I'm never writing another book, even though my agent says I say that every time. Because there are those moments where it's just so hard.
So you don't have another big project?
Yeah. I'm waiting to see what comes into orbit. It has to be the right one. I feel very privileged to be like at the point where it has to be something I'm really interested in. I'm not just going to like jump at the first thing.
That makes sense. Yeah, I think a year ago, I was feeling probably exhausted and burned out by all cookbook stuff. Honestly, I'm glad we had this podcast because it forced me to keep my head in the game. You all three could reinvigorate my interest. But I mean, if there wasn't another project I was working on, I would have walked away. Like I was just done. Like I just felt done. And I think that it just was more of a burnout thing. And we had that episode on burnout, but I don't feel that way this end of this year. I feel tired. I wish I had more free time. I can't wait for this project I've been working on to be off my plate for a bit, and it won't be for a bit. So I'm not even going to think about that. Oh, a side tangent. I was listening to a podcast between two writers, and one of them just said, I turned in, my final edits on this manuscript, and I just felt this lightness. I had to stop listening to the podcast because I'm not at that time yet, and I want to be there. So I'm just like, I'm going to put that on the side. But I do think there is something to be said for persistence. Maybe I'll persevere for another year. I signed with 10 Speed Press to write a small dips book that's due this spring.
That's exciting, Kate. You heard it here first.
You're going to dip into it.
I know. Not even announced on Publishers Marketplace. That will be my spring. And after that, maybe I'll chillax a little bit.
Wouldn't chillaxing be just so grand?
Oh, yeah.
I feel excited about actually the kind of stuff I'm doing on Substack because I feel like the folks there are great readers. I'd love to have more time next year to really develop content for Substack because I think that it's a fabulous place to be. And also in regular social media like Instagram as well. I just haven't had the time in the past couple of years because it's just been really difficult. You only have so many hours in the day.
Yeah.
So I think that there is potential to do different things. And I'm so thrilled that there is a Substack for the podcast because it's a way for folks to engage with everything cookbooks. And I also hope that folks contribute and become paying supporters of the podcast because, it takes us a lot of time and energy to put these episodes together, prep-wise and all. And I haven't been as involved, but I watch y'all and I know every single one of these episodes requires like a lot of hours.
Yeah.
I love the fact that we have a presence on Substack.
Yeah. Thank you, Molly, for maintaining
Yes.
this.
Thanks to Molly. Yeah.
I love doing it.
And then maybe if people are listening and they have ideas that they want to see from us in the coming year, if there's opportunities for more workshops or workshops on the Substack platform that would be behind a paywall, if there's anything that you really want to see that would help you listeners on your journey to write cookbooks, send us a DM. Those are always helpful, and we can use that to figure out our programming for this year.
So I feel like when it comes to persevering with something, it's very obvious sometimes when you should, there's just that feeling. It's kind of almost like outside you and it's driving you and you have the vision and you're really excited about it. The beginning, for me, I'm such a beginning person often. I get really excited about the beginning. But then there's always what's called the dip or the messy middle. Sometimes you just have to push through to get to what you want, whether it's mind over matter or, reaching out to your buddies to for a little boost. But I also think it's really valid at times to move on or to give up, which just in our culture always sounds so horrible. Never give up, right? Yeah, walk away.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering do you have either an example of when you knew it was time to walk away from something, or if there's just a general feeling and you can describe the difference between pushing through the messy middle versus moving on?
I mean, I had no problem walking away from trying to write freelance articles. I have absolutely no interest in pursuing articles, freelance articles for food publications. Some used to come my way and I would do them, but that sort of started to tail off. And I had just when I would get an opportunity, I'd be like, I don't really want to do that. I have no interest in it. And it was something that I looked back and I have no problem just walking away. It just wasn't for me. It's for other people and they're really good at it.
Yeah.
I also, worked at a trade publication for 4 years straight where every single week we had to write, similar types of stories. And I think, Kristin, we've talked about trends forecasting in the past. And sometimes you get to the point where you don't care what the new, burger is going to be.
Yeah.
And so I think there's just times for when that excitement's high, I think you should pursue it. But it's okay to let somebody else who's enthusiastic, wants to interview all the chefs around the country who are using Jimmy Nardello peppers on the menu. That used to be me. It's not me anymore. Yeah. I'm okay with that.
Right. I think something you said right there, Kate, is so important. It used to be me. It's not me anymore. And that I find was, and to some extent still is, the hardest when you're in the hustle and you're in the grind and you're trying everything you can do to get work. I certainly lost sense of what I wanted to write about, what I thought about food. And I would take anything and everything, and being able to catch your breath and go, whoa, did I just write that sentence? Or just, talk about Happy Robot. You come out with some stuff. You say yes to things that maybe, and I've certainly said yes to things that might not have had my byline and done it just for the work. But that's a tricky part. And that, I think that comes back to, we keep touching on wellness, but that comes back to finding space for yourself. So why you're in it. And obviously we don't always have the comfort zone or the ability to say no, because we simply need the work. But it's a tricky balance. I may go back to our interview with Polina Tesnikova. It's such a great episode to listen to, how she went about getting work. But it was always, there was a thread there. She was able to keep a thread of the story she wanted to tell. And I find it very inspirational in terms of, certainly the first books, they weren't the dream job, but they were leading somewhere. I guess it goes back to having a vision for yourself, having a sense of yourself, so you have a sense you're on the route somewhere, even if it seems the circuitous route.
That's a great point.
Yeah, that's beautifully said, Molly. Part of the beauty of how the four of us can be here talking about this is that you just keep at it, and then there is a payoff eventually. And, circling back to, Kristin, what you said, that writing cookbooks is a long tail game. Yeah, at the beginning, you're just everything that comes your way, you have to do because you're trying to build your byline, you're trying to build a platform. But there's also a certain part of your career, a certain time point in your career where you realize it's good enough. I can be at this point and be happy with that, being here in my career, because we basically are working freelance. We don't have those corporate parameters of promotion, right? Of people saying, oh, here's a new title for you. Here's a bonus. Here's a raise. here's 401k. And I actually think that once I realized that I've been saving my ass off, and that I was going to, be at a decent place when I can eventually retire, which is a long time from now. But I was just like, oh, wow, you really were able to make a career of this. It's okay. And even our financial planner said, just relax a little bit. You're going to be all right, for two people who've had alternative lives who rarely get up before 7:30 a.m.
Mm-hmm. It's like an enoughness thing, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. It doesn't always have to be tied to age necessarily, but I do feel like in my 20s and 30s, I was like very motivated by doing cool work, whether that involved like being in a magazine and getting promoted with the title, or some project that was more and more exciting. And I've done a lot of that stuff and it's awesome. But like, yeah, there has come a point where now I'm a little more motivated by like work-life balance, time with family, and not being very stressed by work. So yeah, I've joked I've like lost my ambition, which I don't think is entirely true. But yeah, there are those seasons where you're just much, much more motivated. But I do think you can be struck at any age. It doesn't have to be tied to age, struck with like a passion to do something. And so I don't want anybody to ever think it's too late to start something. No.
No, and certainly we've talked to several people. You think about, Jacques Pepin, Dory Greenspan, Jessica Harris, people who just keep going. And I have nothing but respect and admiration for those who do.
Yeah, because that's persistence too, and that's reinvention.
100%.
And loving what they do, though, really having something to contribute. And that's what keeps us going. If you feel like you have something to contribute.
Yeah. Oh, speaking of Dory Greenspan, just an aside, she gives her publisher an outline for her cookbook, and then she scraps the outline and she just goes in there and starts baking, and it totally changes. And so I did a talk with her at the JCCSF in October. And so, there's a joke with people who write novels. You're either a plotter and you plot the whole novel out, or you're a pantser and write by the seat of your pants. And that probably doesn't actually, I think everyone's sort of a mix between the two. But she says she's a cookbook pantser. So she just goes in there and bakes this off the seat of her pants and figures out these beautiful books. So I think also just getting familiar with the way you work on a project. And maybe you are someone who just needs to work off the cuff and not be so tied down to, but I gave my publisher this rigid. Yes, the structure. I think some people need that freedom and other people don't want that freedom. They actually want a guide to get them to the next step. So just know that there's lots of ways to be creative. And I think that goes to any kind of creative project, but it does apply to cookbooks. I know I can get a little rigid, like you got to have that proposal, but like then sometimes like this idea comes and it's just great.
Correct. But I think that publishers do want to have a plotter at the outset so that there is an outline.
For first-time authors, you probably just got to be a plotter.
Don't be a pantser, folks.
If you're not a natural plotter, hire one to help you.
Yeah, we're all for hire.
Right. Meet your deadlines. Yeah.
Yeah, you need to show that you got concrete ideas and you're going to follow through. And then once that, things are set.
Once you're Dory.
Yeah, then take your pants off and run around and do whatever you want to do.
All right. Well, it's just been fun way to spend the end of the year, wrap up the end of the year. I'm wondering if there's anything you're looking forward to most in 2026 or a lesson from this year that you want to share with our listeners.
For me, I realize that I think I want things now, and I have to realize things take time. This year, I had wanted to have a novel on submission, and I do not have a novel on submission. I have a novel in a drawer that needs work, and I have a new one in the works that I think is a better, structurally more sound story. My goal in 2026 is to get it in the best shape possible. And then I'm not going to worry about the timeline. I'm not going to say, by the time I'm this age, I must have published this novel. No, I'm just trying to give myself a little grace because things take time. They take the time that they need to take.
Yeah.
That's great. We have faith in you.
Yeah, we totally do.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Besides more episodes of Everything Cookbooks. I mean, these seasons roll out. I can't believe we're wrapping up season 8 soon and just have more and more ideas for episodes. But I'm really looking forward to reading more culinary, I guess, narrative nonfiction. There are a few books on my bedside table. B. Wilson's Heart-Shaped Tin is one. Alicia Kennedy has she's written a memoir. I think it's called On Eating. that I'm really looking forward to. I think it's coming out this spring. And then Tamar Adler wrote a book, Feast of Your Life. So I'm very interested in these types of readings, and I want to make time to read them.
Yeah, same here. Same here. In fact, I am reading B. Wilson's Heart-Shaped Tin.
I am too.
Aw.
It's a beautiful book that is at times sad, but at times uplifting. And that's just on the heels of this other book, The Last Sweet Bite, that I read this year too, about political atrocities. Maybe we can talk to some of those folks next year.
Absolutely. I'd love
I
that.
just want more beautiful words in my life.
Yes.
I agree with you, Molly. I feel like I'm craving that as well. The nature of social media and the phone, it's just stealing our attention. But also, for me, I feel like it's also robbing my capacity for attention.
Absolutely.
If I read a book, I found I now just have to put my phone in the other room. So I'm not even tempted. So I'm with you, Molly. I really want to immerse myself in great words. Well, wonderful spending all this time with you. Happy New Year to our listeners. Hope 2026 brings you both some shedding the bad stuff and fire horse energy toward that project you're really excited about.
Thank you, Kristin.
Thank you, Kristin.
Great to see everyone. Happy New Year.
Happy holidays.
Thank you for listening to Everything Cookbooks. For more about each episode, subscribe to our newsletter at everythingcookbooks.substack.com. Here are some other ways to support the show. Go to everythingcookbooks.com and check out our totes, t-shirts, sweatshirts, and other merch, or buy us a round of coffee. You can also leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen. Thanks, as always, to our editor, Abby Circatella. Until next time, keep on writing, reading, and cooking.